Right now, before we go any further, I want you to think about this simple truth. Every emotion you've ever felt had a physical component. When you felt powerful, your chest was open, your breathing was strong, your energy was high. When you felt defeated, your shoulders dropped, your breath became shallow, your body collapsed inward. That's not an accident. That's not coincidence. That is a law of human experience. Emotion does not start in the mind, it starts in the body. And the fastest way to change how you feel is to change how you move. Emotion is not something that randomly visits you or mysteriously controls you. It is something you actively create, whether you are aware of it or not. Every emotional state you experience is built on a physical foundation, a specific way you use your body in each moment. When people feel energized, confident, and driven, their bodies expand, their breathing deepens, their movements become purposeful and strong. When they feel discouraged, fearful, or overwhelmed, their bodies contract, their breathing shortens, their energy drops. This pattern is universal, and it reveals a powerful truth. Emotion follows motion, not the other way around. Most people believe emotions happen first and actions follow, but the body tells a very different story. Long before a thought becomes dominant, the body has already taken a position. A slouched posture sends a signal of defeat to the nervous system, while an upright posture communicates certainty and strength. Shallow breathing signals stress and danger, while deep rhythmic breathing signals safety and control. These physical signals instantly shape how you feel, often without your conscious awareness. The body is constantly leading the mind, quietly deciding the emotional tone of your experience. Think about moments of joy, pride, or triumph in your life. Your body was not passive in those moments. There was movement, expression, energy, and presence. Now think about moments of sadness or frustration, and you'll notice a completely different physical pattern. The difference wasn't the world around you, it was the way you inhabited your body. This means emotions are not fixed states, and they are not dictated by circumstances. They are patterns you step into through physical behavior, and patterns can be changed. This realization is empowering because it puts control back in your hands. You don't have to wait for confidence to appear before you act confidently. You don't have to wait for motivation before you take action. When you change your physical state first, emotion follows naturally. By changing how you move, stand, breathe, and express yourself, you interrupt old emotional habits and replace them with new ones. The body does not debate, it responds immediately. That response becomes emotion, and that emotion influences your thoughts, decisions, and actions. People who consistently perform at a high level understand this, whether consciously or instinctively. They don't rely on moods. They rely on rituals of movement, posture, and breathing that condition powerful emotional states. Over time, their bodies learn to associate certain movements with certainty, focus, and drive. What once required effort becomes automatic because the body has been trained to generate strength on demand. When you recognize that emotion is created, not given, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of how you feel. You begin to see emotion as a tool, something you can shape and direct through physical action. The moment you move differently, you feel differently, and that shift opens the door to new choices, new behaviors, and new results without waiting for permission from circumstances or chance. The body is always speaking to the mind, and the mind is always listening, whether you realize it or not. Long before a thought turns into a belief, your physiology has already sent a message about what is safe, what is possible, and what kind of energy you are bringing into the moment. The way you stand, the way you breathe, the tension you hold in your muscles, all of it shapes how you interpret the world around you. Change the body, and you change the signal. Change the signal, and the emotional experience shifts instantly. Posture alone can transform how you feel within seconds. When your shoulders are pulled back, your spine is upright, and your head is lifted, your nervous system receives a message of readiness and strength. Blood flow increases, oxygen intake improves, and the brain becomes more alert. Compare that to a collapsed posture, where the chest caves in and the head drops forward. That physical position communicates threat, fatigue, or defeat. The mind responds by producing emotions that match the body's message, often without any conscious reasoning involved. Breathing works the same way. Rapid, shallow breaths tell the brain that something is wrong, triggering stress and anxiety responses. Slow, deep breathing does the opposite, activating calm, clarity, and control. You can think your way into stress for minutes or hours, but you can breathe your way out of it in moments. This is why the body leads the mind. It operates faster than thought, faster than logic, and faster than willpower. Physiology is the remote control for emotion. Movement amplifies this effect even further. When you move with intensity, purpose, and rhythm, your energy rises. Your focus sharpens. Your emotional state shifts from passive to active. That is why standing still in frustration makes problems feel heavier, while walking, stretching, or moving forcefully often brings relief and insight. The body in motion creates momentum, and momentum changes perception. Suddenly, challenges feel smaller, options feel larger, and action feels possible. The mistake most people make is trying to solve emotional problems only with their mind. They sit still, replaying the same thoughts, reinforcing the same physical patterns, expecting a different emotional result. But the mind is responding to the body it's connected to. When the body doesn't change, the emotional state stays the same. Real transformation happens when you reverse the order and lead with physiology. By consciously choosing how you use your body, you take command of your emotional state. You decide to stand stronger, breathe deeper, and move with purpose even when you don't feel like it. And in doing so, you send a new message to your nervous system. That message becomes a new emotion, and that emotion becomes the fuel for better thinking and better decisions. Over time, this practice rewires your emotional habits. You stop being at the mercy of moods and start creating states on demand. The body becomes an ally instead of an obstacle, a powerful tool you can use to guide your mind towards strength, clarity, and certainty whenever you choose. Stagnation is one of the most destructive forces in human experience, because when the body stops moving, the mind begins to spiral. When there is no physical momentum, emotions turn inward. Doubts grow louder and problems feel heavier than they actually are. Frustration is rarely caused by doing too much. It is almost always caused by doing too little of what moves you forward. The longer a person stays still, the more their emotional energy collapses. And the harder it becomes to see possibility or direction. The body was designed for motion, not for prolonged stillness under stress. When movement disappears, energy has nowhere to go. That trapped energy turns into irritation, anxiety, or a sense of being stuck. You can feel this in everyday life. When you sit in one place, replaying the same thoughts, the emotion intensifies. When you get up and move, even slightly, the emotional charge begins to loosen. Motion breaks the pattern that stagnation creates, and with that break comes relief. Momentum is powerful because it creates feedback. Movement changes physiology. Physiology changes emotion. And emotion fuels more movement. This is how confidence is built. Not through thinking about confidence, but through repeated action that conditions the body to associate movement with progress. Once momentum starts, clarity follows. Decisions become easier, not because the situation changed, but because your state changed. In motion, the mind stops obsessing and starts responding. Confidence grows in action, not in waiting. When you move forward, even imperfectly, your nervous system learns that you can handle uncertainty. Each step, each physical action reinforces a sense of capability. This is why small movements matter. A short walk, a shift in posture, a deliberate breath can be enough to tip the emotional scale. From that small shift, larger actions become possible and the sense of power increases. Stagnation convinces people that they need more information, more certainty, or more motivation before they act. In reality, action creates all three. When you move, you gather feedback. When you gather feedback, you gain understanding. When understanding grows, confidence follows. Motion simplifies complexity by forcing engagement with reality instead of imagination. The mind stops creating worst-case scenarios and starts solving real problems. High performers understand that when emotions drop, the solution is not to wait, but to move. They change rooms, change posture, change pace, or change focus through physical action. These shifts may seem small, but they disrupt emotional inertia. Once the body is engaged, the mind re-engages with purpose and direction. Power is not something you find by standing still and hoping for clarity. Power is something you generate by moving when it would be easier to remain stuck. Every step forward, no matter how small, sends a message to the nervous system that progress is happening. That message restores energy, sharpens focus, and builds the confidence that only momentum can provide. Peak performers don't leave their emotional state to chance because they understand that emotion determines performance in every moment. They know that skill without the right state is unreliable, and talent without emotional control collapses under pressure. Instead of reacting to how they feel, they condition themselves to create the emotions they need on demand. When pressure rises, they don't hesitate or hope for confidence to appear. They shift their physiology and take control instantly. Every human being has emotional patterns, and those patterns are triggered by familiar cues. A certain tone of voice, a specific environment, or a remembered failure can pull someone into frustration or fear in seconds. Peak performers interrupt those patterns before they take hold. They do it through deliberate movement, changes in posture, breathing, and intensity. The moment the body changes, the emotional pattern loses its grip. The nervous system cannot maintain the same emotion when the physical signals no longer match it. This ability to break negative states quickly is what separates consistent performers from inconsistent ones. Most people wait too long. They notice they're frustrated only after it has already affected their behavior. High-level performers notice the first signal, the tightening of the shoulders, the shallow breath, the slowing of movement, and they respond immediately. They move with force, breathe deeply, and re-engage their body with purpose. In seconds, the emotional trajectory shifts. What makes this process powerful is its simplicity. It does not require analysis or self-criticism. The body responds faster than thought, and peak performers use that speed to their advantage. A powerful stance, an intentional breath, a decisive movement can reset emotional direction instantly. Over time, these actions become automatic. The body learns that stress is a cue for strength, not collapse. Negative emotional patterns lose power when they are no longer reinforced. Each time a performer interrupts frustration with movement and intensity, the old pattern weakens. The nervous system begins to associate challenge with activation instead of avoidance. This conditioning creates emotional resilience. Pressure no longer drains energy, it sharpens it. Stress no longer overwhelms, it focuses. This is why preparation for peak performance always includes physical rituals, warm-ups, pacing, breathing techniques, and specific movements are not just about readiness, they are about emotional control. The performer is not just preparing the body to act, but preparing the mind to respond with certainty and clarity. Emotion becomes a resource instead of a liability. Anyone can apply this principle. You don't need a stage, a competition, or an audience. When frustration shows up, move. When doubt creeps in, change your posture. When energy drops, increase intensity. These actions send a new message to your nervous system, and that message reshapes your emotional state. The more consistently you practice this, the faster the shift becomes. What once took minutes takes seconds. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Emotional discipline is not about suppression or denial. It is about redirection through motion. And in that redirection, you reclaim control over how you show up, perform, and respond under any condition. Peak performers don't rely on willpower or positive thinking when emotions threaten to derail them, because they understand that emotion is a physical pattern, not a philosophical problem. When pressure hits, the average person freezes, overthinks, or reacts unconsciously. Peak performers respond differently. They act immediately on their physiology, knowing that speed matters. The faster they interrupt a negative emotional pattern, the less power it has. They don't negotiate with fear or frustration. They override it with motion. Every emotional state has a predictable physical signature. Frustration tightens the jaw, shortens the breath, and pulls the shoulders forward. Doubt slows movement and collapses posture. Peak performers train themselves to recognize these signals early before the emotion fully takes over. The moment they feel the shift beginning, they change something physical on purpose. They stand taller, breathe deeper, move faster, or increase intensity. That physical disruption breaks the emotional loop instantly. What separates them from everyone else is consistency. They don't wait until emotions spiral out of control. They act at the first sign. This early intervention keeps emotional states from becoming identities. Instead of saying, I am stressed or I am frustrated, They treat the emotion as a temporary condition that can be changed. The body becomes the switch that flips the state. One decisive movement can replace hesitation with certainty. This process works because the nervous system cannot hold two conflicting messages at the same time. You see, cannot breathe deeply and powerfully while remaining anxious. You cannot stand with strength and presence while feeling defeated. When the body sends a signal of power, the mind adjusts to match it. Peak performers use this biological truth repeatedly until it becomes automatic. Under pressure, their default response is activation, not avoidance. Over time, this conditioning rewires emotional responses. Stress stops triggering shutdown and starts triggering focus. Challenge no longer signals danger, it signals engagement. The body learns that intensity equals safety and readiness. This is not something that happens overnight, but with repetition, the shift becomes permanent. What once required conscious effort turns into instinct. This is why high performers have rituals before important moments. They don't see them as habits, they see them as emotional anchors. Specific movements, breathing patterns, or gestures cue the body into a powerful state. The ritual tells the nervous system exactly how to feel. Once the state is activated, performance follows naturally. The same principle applies in everyday life. When frustration appears, staying still feeds it. Movement dissolves it. When energy drops, increasing intensity restores it. When doubt arises, expanding posture neutralizes it. These are not motivational tricks. They are physical commands that reshape emotional experience. Emotional discipline is the ability to redirect state through action instead of reaction. It's the skill of choosing motion over paralysis and intensity over hesitation. When you master this, emotions stop controlling your performance, and performance becomes something you can access on demand through deliberate movement and decisive action. Lasting change does not come from a single burst of motivation or a moment of insight. It comes from conditioning emotional states through repeated FISE. Cal action. The body learns through repetition, and whatever you practice consistently becomes your default. When you repeatedly move in ways that generate strength, certainty, and focus, those emotions stop being temporary experiences and start becoming familiar states you can access naturally. Over time, the body no longer waits for permission from circumstances to feel powerful. Every action you take sends a message to your nervous system about who you are and what you are capable of. When action is consistent, the message becomes identity. Small, deliberate physical habits may seem insignificant in the moment, but they compound into emotional conditioning. Standing tall when you feel tired, breathing deeply when stress appears, moving with intention when doubt arises, each repetition trains the body to respond with empowerment instead of withdrawal. Consistency is what turns emotional control into emotional mastery. One powerful movement can change how you feel temporarily, but repeated movements rewire how you respond permanently. The nervous system adapts to what it experiences most often. If you regularly interrupt weakness with strength, hesitation with motion, and fear with engagement, the body learns that these are the correct responses. Eventually, you no longer have to force the shift, it happens automatically. This is how lasting change separates itself from short-term breakthroughs. Many people experience moments of inspiration only to fall back into old patterns because their bodies were never conditioned to hold the new state. The emotion was real, but it wasn't trained. Conditioning happens when you reinforce the same empowering state again and again, especially when it would be easier to revert to old habits. The moments when you don't feel like moving are the moments that matter most. As these physical rituals become part of daily life, emotion, strength stops being situational. Confidence shows up not because everything is going well, but because the body knows how to generate it. Focus appears not because distractions disappear, but because the nervous system has been trained to respond with clarity. Power becomes something internal, something you create rather than something you wait for. Over time, this conditioning reshapes how you interpret challenges. Obstacles no longer signal threat, they signal activation. Pressure no longer drains energy, it sharpens it. The body recognizes familiar cues and responds with the emotional states it has been trained to produce. This is the foundation of resilience and consistency. When emotional states are conditioned through motion, discipline no longer feels like force. It feels like alignment. You are no longer fighting your own biology, you are working with it. The body becomes a reliable partner, capable of generating strength, focus, and certainty on demand. This is why lasting transformation always begins with physical action and is sustained through repetition. When motion becomes a habit, emotion becomes a choice. And when emotion becomes a choice, you step into a level of personal power that is stable, repeatable, and available to you in every moment of your life.